All right, so I just want to kind of get into like I want to hear how you got into the makerspace because I mean you had mentioned the last time we spoke that you started off in engineering, right? You were like a software engineer, and then you kind of switched over to more of the makerspace.
Yeah, so I mean, in college, I went to school for computer science, which when I became a software engineer, I kind of call myself a fake engineer because at the college I went to, the computer science people didn't actually have to go through the engineering school. And I have a lot of friends that went through the engineering school, and I know all of the trials and tribulations they went through. But I didn't have to go through any of that. And so I escaped with the title of engineer without actually doing anything physical that involves, measurements and math and forces and physics or anything like that. So post college, I always was kind of enticed by the idea of a 3D printer. Ever since I did a couple engineering courses in high school, which is, a lot lower level and everything
Right.
like that. But um, you know, the I reached an intersection, or at least the landscape reached an intersection where the prices of a 3D printer completely dipped. They used to be something that your average person couldn't buy. You'd
Right.
have to be like a school or a company, and they would cost, $1,500 at the bare minimum.
Right.
Um, and as these 3D printer prices were falling, the pandemic hit. So I
Perfect
was
timing.
exactly, yeah. I was looking for something to do. Um and I thought I'd give it a shot, and I just started, doing the classic 3D printing little trinkets here and there. But then I saw kind of a little bit of an opening uh to make some content because it didn't feel like many people were making projects based off of like video game and tech related things from the focus of like a 3D printing angle. So that's kind of where I started. And with that came a lot of learning along the way. Not only does 3D printing at the time had like a relatively high skill floor or a knowledge floor, but with that, the more you can 3D model yourself, the more
Right.
you can be enabled to
Right.
actually make these 3D prints.
Right, for sure. It's funny you said it's like the engineering thing. So I have a friend who's like the exact opposite. He went to school for mechanical engineering, and then he ended up getting hired as a software engineer. So it's like the exact opposite. It's funny, but yeah, no, for sure. Like the 3D modeling aspect definitely is huge. I mean, like there's so much out there in terms of like Thingiverse and Cults and all these different websites where you can get free models and obviously the paid models too. That like you really could get away without modeling. But no, but for sure, if you could like make your own stuff, then sky's the limit. Like, you kind of whip something up and print it, and you can bring whatever you want to life. It's just but that's the to me that's the most fun part. It's like kind of having an idea and like bringing it out into the world is just like it's super cool and super fun. Um, so like tell me, walk me through a little bit. So you started 3D printing. Were you like a maker before? Were you tinkering and making projects before, or it was kind of just you had this free time during the pandemic? You're like, you know what? Let me start printing and kind of see what I could come up with.
I mean, my only like maker experience was kind of like back in high school or even like elementary school. Whenever you had like art class and you had to work with clay, I'd make like a little pokeball. In high school, I went to like a convention or two, and I crafted up some old really really bad cosplays, and there were also like I had made like there were perler beads, which are those things that you put together and they make it look like pixels, and you
Oh yeah,
you
yeah, yeah. With the
iron it
iron.
together. Yeah, so
This is
like
guy. This is guy online. He makes these really cool like stop motions with those perler beads. He'll take like whatever you call it, like little canvas that you put them on, and like he'll like make like whatever. Like I saw one recently. He like made like a little like basically a stick figure like on a skateboard, and he like started doing a whole stop motion. The guy like rides off it, and he starts like he like like irons it. Like and the guy starts like riding around and stuff. And those things are yeah, there's a lot of fun. Those things.
I do not envy that person. That sounds like it takes like so much
Yeah,
time, but
and
hopefully
stop
it's
motion takes a
therapeutic.
special kind of special kind of patience.
Oh yeah, I know. I think one of my early videos, I made like a crappy stop motion thing with 3D prints to do this stupid little Among Us sketch I had, where it's like this little Among Us stabs the other Among Us, and then I come in with the real life emergency button and press it, and it was so time consuming for not that much of a reward, to be honest.
I once heard this thing. I don't know if it's true or not, but like there's only like there's like basically one or two stop motion studios out there. It's like Leica and I don't know what else. There's anything else.
Aardman's the claymation people who make like Wallace and Gromit and stuff like that.
So I'm not sure which one it is, but one of the big ones. So it must be one of those two. Apparently, the person that like owns the studio is like the son of like some like maybe Michael Jordan, like some like basketball player.
Really?
And like the only reason why the studio is able to stay in business is because of like their father's money. Because like stop motion apparently is just it's so not profitable. Like it's so expensive to make. It's so time consuming. And it's like you need to make like crazy returns at the box office if you want to like break even. I mean, and especially when you get to like the high level stuff. Like, I mean, I personally love stop motion. I think it's like some of those beautiful movies come out of stop motion, like Kubo and the Two Strings is
Kubo and Coraline.
Gorgeous. Coraline's amazing. Did you see the Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio?
Pinocchio, that's on my list. I haven't seen it yet. But
it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. And it's so like Guillermo del Toro is like one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite. And it's so him. Like it's not like it's not like a Disney Pinocchio story. It's like really kind of out there and like dark fantasy, and it's really good. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it yet.
I really do, because I've seen a couple of videos that like highly recommend. I think I've seen like someone who watched all the Pinocchio films was like, you got to see the Del Toro one though. It's pretty good.
It was so good.
You know what's kind of crazy is I got to see this past, I think it was spring. I went to Seattle to see my friend. I go to Seattle a lot to see him, and we went to the Mopop Museum, and they had a special exhibit for whatever that stop motion company was. You said Leica, right?
Yeah.
So it was them. So they had like Coraline, they had Kubo, they had all these sets from the actual movies.
Nice.
And they went through like the process of how they made all of these, and apparently they were very revolutionary for using 3D printing all the way back in the day, because it was taking too long to, get everything sculpted by hand. Yeah. So Coraline, I think, was the first movie to extensively use 3D printing for all the different faces and, a lot of the different body parts. And by the time they got to Kubo, they went more advanced and started using like multicolored prints, not in the same way that like a bamboo printer is, but more so with like, I think, inkjet infusions that like, it was a really like cool thing to walk through and be like, that's me, I 3D print, it's just like me. They're kind of intertwined now, which I think is like really cool. And it makes sense because you have to have so many custom things without like a large scale manufacturing process. And that's kind of what it's all about.
There's this woman I follow on Instagram. I don't remember her name, but she does like, she makes kind of like also stop motion videos. And it's interesting because like when you think of like the old stop motion, like Wallace and Gromit, let's say, it's like claymation, right? Where it's like they kind of like each frame they're kind of molding the clay differently and taking pieces off or whatever. With the Coraline, like the more modern stop motion stuff, I think what they're doing is, at least, and like this woman, this is what she does, is they'll like print the head of the character, and then they basically have like magnetic pieces. So let's say the mouth, like they just like pop off pieces, like so they'll have different facial expressions that they could just like swap out, and then I guess in post processing they could just edit out that little line that you, from the separation, the seam, and so it kind of just like speeds up the whole process. It's really, I mean, it's like. Yeah, it's such a cool art form. Like, it's like I said, it's super time consuming, and like it's not really necessarily the most profitable, but like just the pure art aspect of it is just the end result is so beautiful. It's so like it's just mesmerizing to watch.
If I can find it, I have this picture on my phone that has like a deconstructed Coraline with all these different like layers of it from all these different resin prints.
Oh wow!
I got to send it to you on Discord if I can find it after this.
Really
but
cool.
it's like a really cool deconstruction, kind of like kind of like those like robot deconstruction kind of things, or like Astro Boy art and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, this is my
really
stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So let me ask you, why'd you pick Pokemon? Is that like, are you particularly fond of Pokemon, or it's kind of just that's what people like to watch?
Column A and Column B, I'd say. I mean, like, I grew up like being an absolute Pokemon fanatic, you know, from certain periods of my adolescence. But sometimes the society you grow up in, your social groups kind of pound that out of you for a little bit. And then you only realize later in life, like, you all like Pokemon, but you didn't tell me? You know? But, you know, my relationship with Pokemon kind of like has gone up and down over the years. And when I started, you know, that was kind of around like the Sword Shield kind of time. So iffy
so
time
not so long ago.
Yeah. It was, you know, back in 2020, I think is when I kind of like, you know, when the pandemic hit, that's when I started 3D printing. And I really liked, you know, working with tech stuff, of course, you know, as a software engineer and all that stuff. So I'm like, well, I just want to make video game based projects and have some sort of fun gimmick behind whatever I'm doing. And I didn't want to be pigeonholed to like one franchise. But as time kind of moved along and, you know, things like the Jaden animation video popped off, the Fuecoco rice cooker video, you know, Sword, I started to realize that I was going to more focus specifically on Pokemon. And at first, I was a little iffy on that for multiple reasons. You don't really want to put all your eggs into one basket.
Right.
But the more I kind of like worked with the franchise, I kind of re-fell in love with Pokemon. And I realized that it is such a creative IP, and there are so many possibilities with this. And particularly, there aren't really many people who are doing physical projects with Pokemon. So if that's the role on the internet I need to fill, then I was way more happy to do that as time went along.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you, I'm curious because I've looked through your channel, and, you know, like I've seen some of your like first videos with like some things about like Super Smash Bros. What's that about?
So, I mean, in college, that was like kind of my big thing. It was like I was a big Smash Bros. Guy, you know, throughout my life as well. In college, I got really serious about Smash Bros, where I was going to competitions. I was, you know, back in Smash 4, I was like top 10 in Wisconsin.
Wow.
A lot of my social circle was Smash and still is Smash. You know, if you see the Reed, who is like my best friend, he's in a lot of the videos. And we lived together for like 4 or 5 years until, you know, this year. So like Smash Bros has actually been part of my life for a huge, embarrassingly large chunk of it. I guess not embarrassing. You know, I have Smash Bros to thank for so many things in my life, to be honest. But that was my actual first video that blew up, was using this Titan 1 device, which...
What's a Titan 1?
Yeah, so it normally is used for just translating like a controller input to another controller. So you could use like a Pro controller with a PS4 or use a PS4 controller with your PC. The big thing about it, though, is you could put scripts, which most people use to just cheat. But I found a way to use it to have this little device which plugs into your Switch. You don't need to modify it at all because a lot of people didn't have moddable switches or they were worried about modding. And I'm like, this kind of fills that niche a little bit. So you plug it in and then you can have the CPU during training mode kind of like run through different scripts. So you could work with different reactions to your hits, right? Because in Smash Bros, when you hit someone, where your follow-up is influenced is by directional influence. So when you get hit, you can choose a direction to go, and it will slightly change your trajectory. And when you have different trajectories that you can go after your first hit, you need to react to that to continue your combo if you're on the offensive. So having like a little script like this to practice like randomized DI,
just so you're playing against another person as opposed to just like a bot that's kind of just going to be very standard.
Yeah, it's still a bot, but it has more human behavior.
Right,
is
right.
kind of the idea.
Oh, cool. That's really cool. So that was like your first. Those were like some of your first YouTube videos, and then
Yeah.
and then you kind of moved away from that into more of like making 3D printing and more of like the project space.
There was this brief period of time, and nobody really knows about this except for my friends, where I started to try to do a Nuzlocke Let's Play of Sun and Moon, because I'd never played Sun and Moon, so it was a blind Nuzlocke. And it was very highly edited, and it took a lot of effort. And Let's Plays, it's almost impossible to get any traction.
Yeah.
Since then, I've unlisted all of those. And then that's when the 3D printing thing started. So I realized like I've always wanted to do YouTube. Since I was a kid, I've watched way too much of it. And I kind of had like the skill sets kind of all came together where in college I also had like a minor in film and digital media kind of, and I've always liked doing that since high school. So all these kind of skill sets came together to form what should be a decent YouTuber. With that and like all the acting things I did in high school and college.
Yeah.
But I just didn't have a creative like output for it yet.
Right.
Like I didn't have a good idea, right? And that's, when the eureka moment came together with the whole 3D printing thing. And I'm like, this could be something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Was there like a specific moment you could like point to, or like a specific video like that kind of made you realize like, oh, I think I'm onto something here?
I think I knew from the start that the fact that this was kind of a niche intersection right away, because I've seen like success with other people who have done unique project builds, such as like the Shank mods, portable Wii's and things like that. That group, they do fantastic things, and it gets a lot of traction for a good reason. I think that, they're very solid, cool projects. And I knew that like if I was going to try to do this, that was the route I was going to go down. And there were a lot of like learning things along the way. I thought, oh, well, if I just put out this big, crazy tech project, everyone's going to want to see it. And that kind of like spawned the McDonald's table I have. That's like, this is good. This is guaranteed to get billions. But
how'd you like get that? Did you like find like an old one? Like how'd you get your hands on one of those to do that?
Well, I did a lot of investigation. I don't think it was an official product of McDonald's. I think it was a beta thing from a company in China pretending to be a different company from Hong Kong, coming over to America, showing off their wares, and nobody wanted it, so it got abandoned, and then like traded hands across America.
So you found like on eBay or something, or
Facebook Marketplace.
Nice.
To the basement of this somewhat sketchy guy, and he had
like, am I going to make it out of here alive?
I wasn't that worried, but the vibes weren't like the most normal when I was going down there.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool.
But the moment that made me realize like I could actually do this was the Jaden Animations video, where I'm like, okay, like I finally have a video over 1 million views. This is when I realized like I'm definitely sticking with project-based things, and I could possibly see this develop into something else than just a hobby.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when was that Jaden video? When did you put that out?
I think that was May or June of 2023. So about a year and a half ago from now.
So it was like 3 years into making this kind of content.
Yeah. If I started in 2020, then it was 3 full years in before I got what people call, your break.
Yeah.
I think the big 3DS video, was, and the Spear Tomb videos were also like huge milestones along the way. So not to discredit those videos or anything like that.
Right.
But that was like the biggest break. I think it's still my biggest uptick in subscribers. I think it was like responsible for like almost a third of my channel.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So let me ask you, like, I'm curious, like, so you were doing it for 3 years till you kind of had this mega hit. Like, how'd you keep yourself consistent and like just putting out video? How often were you doing it? You doing it like once a week, once every few weeks? How often were you uploading?
Well,
I know you
because
did that once a week challenge that you recommended.
yeah, and I try to I think consistency is very good when you're doing it, but you have to be realistic about what your current situation is and what your means are, and you still have to have a balance of like life and relationships with people in your life, of course. And that's why what you're referencing is the Doug guide for first-time content creators. And I guess when I sent that to you, I forgot the caveats of both. I think his own pinned comment is consistency doesn't have to be every week. It should just be, you know, something that you do at a set time interval.
Right.
And I was, you know, the thing about like project-based videos is that the timeline for one of them can vary between, you know, like a week build or a 2-3 month build if it's something more ambitious, and things always go wrong, and you always have to build like a buffer time into that.
Right.
The fact that I was still, you know, working a full-time job and also trying to make these videos, I could get one out about 2 months it would take me, and they were more simplistic kind of concepts and ideas at the time, outside of like the big 3DS thing. And I, you know, I'm looking back and I'm like, how did I release even a video every 2 or 3 months? Like, that's kind of crazy. With a full-time job.
How much time were you putting into each video? Like, let's say per week, or I would say per day. I would say per week.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I was working at home, so sometimes I would use a bit of time to, you know, set up 3D prints or, you know, do a little editing here and there. Man, it's kind of a blur now that it's been like a year and a half, almost a year and a half now. I would say I would be putting in like 15 to 20 hours a week, if even that. I crammed a lot during weekends, so it's like, especially during the winter here in the Midwest, where there's a lot of snow on the ground and not a lot to do, gave me a lot more weekend time to really kind of like hammer down on these projects.
Yeah. Wow. So, but now you told me that now you're doing it full time. Like you're full time YouTubing, and you kind of left behind the software engineering side of things. Yeah. Yeah.
I've left behind all semblance of normalcy and guaranteed income.
How's it working out for you? Like the full time YouTube thing.
Honestly, I haven't been tanking my finances. I wanted to make sure. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I had like enough of a safety net before I like made the leap. Yeah. And so far I've just kind of been hanging 10 right now. I'm not making the big bucks, but I'm also not like losing thousands of dollars a month or anything like that.
And also you're doing what you love, which is like that in and of itself is kind of worth it. You know, like you're kind of get to do things that you enjoy, get to make things you like. And if you could support yourself doing it, you know, like that's kind of the dream there, you know?
Yeah.
That's yeah, for sure. Yeah. How does it work? Like when you kind of have an idea for a project, what's kind of your process of like from concept to final product? What's the kind of general outline look like?
Yeah, well, the first big thing is always just like weeding out the weaker ideas, and it's not necessarily like an idea is a bad idea. It's just more difficult to make a narrative or a story around the gimmick or the build process or something like that. So if somebody challenges me to do something that I know and I think it's, you know, interesting, I'll try to do it. But when a YouTube comment says, "Oh, make a like a Charge-a-Bug RC car," I'm like, I guess I could, but I just don't see the first of all the story potential and then like the view potential afterwards. Yeah. So after I weed something out, the first thing I tried to do is buy, like I spend a lot of time going on different websites and Amazon to try to figure out how to buy all of the non-3D printing components to it that I'm going to be building around, because you know, you might have to go through a couple different iterations of the things you buy.
Right.
And then once that's kind of like all solidly in place, I start measuring things out to actually start doing the CAD design around that.
Yeah.
And after, sometimes I might need to work with other people, other artists, other 3D, people or specialty
Yeah.
things. So it's not always a linear process, but after that's sorted out, I do the modeling, which can take, upwards of a couple of days, depending on the complexity of the project. Start 3D printing everything out. And that's kind of more of like the time where there's a little bit of a downtime. So I try to work on future things for other videos, because I typically have like more than one project going on at a time.
Yeah.
If you're a fan, you probably don't believe that just because of how long it takes to get something out, but it's true. And then after everything's printed out, it's time to assemble everything together. Usually painting sometimes involved, test everything out, go back to the drawing board if some things didn't work.
Yeah.
A lot of prototyping. There's a lot actually behind the scenes that I don't even include in the video because I don't think it's interesting. It's like, oh, this cap doesn't quite fit in here, so I need to print out 3 more versions to see which one actually works.
Right. Yeah,
so
I never realized, like, until I started like trying to make my own YouTube videos, like I never realized how much doesn't go in. Like for a 10-minute video, it's like hours and hours of footage of just, and it's like you're filming and you're getting everything, and then you're like, wait a second, none of this is usable, and like I gotta condense it and like distill down those perfect 10 minutes, because no one wants to just see you kind of sitting there like screwing things in, and kind of like it's so it's just you don't like think about it, because you watch a YouTube video like, oh, this is a 5-minute video, like you probably put it together in 3 minutes, And it's like, oh man, like I didn't realize that it's hours and hours of work just to like get a short video out there, and like even that, it's, even that's not simple.
Yeah, I totally know exactly what you're saying. And I think it's actually like a trap that a lot of like first time maker channels kind of like fall into, is they are so, like inner focused about what happened during the process, that they do not cut out the fat. They're not picky in terms of what problems to showcase during the video. Because problems, of course, can be very powerful narrative tools, but they need to be problems that are interesting and fit in with the narrative that you are. Sometimes I get a little too aggressive with my hand motions.
Too animated.
Yeah, but you have to be, the problems need to fit in with whatever the narrative you're trying to tell. Otherwise, it's just you rambling about some very technical thing that the vast majority of people do not care about.
Right,
so,
yeah, it's you want it to be like entertaining, that's especially with like YouTube. Like that's, people aren't coming to like hear a college lecture about how something is made. They want kind of the entertaining aspect of like, oh, let's see, like, oh, that's cool. Oh, what happened? Oh, that went wrong. Oh, like it's much more of a, you're telling a story more so than this is how I made this.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of that's like the big mental transformation you have to go through as like a maker creator YouTube person, is trying to figure out that out.
To kind of figure that out and kind of get your system down of like how you tell your stories.
It's a good question. I think I had already been making videos for like a couple of years. Like I think it was like probably like year 2 when I watched 2 videos that really kind of influenced how I make my videos. And I think it was the Doug one where he talks about first-time content creators. I think there were a lot of like snippets here and there that I definitely pulled from. But Void Star Labs is a 3D printing YouTube channel, and he also had a guide for maker channels, and he talked about the concept of telling a story, of course, but most importantly, I love the term he used, and that's called "don't be greedy with your content." And that really is about, of course, trimming out all those issues,
Yeah.
being very focused on the story, and that I think all together really contributes to a well-paced video. And that's something that I think really was kind of a pivot point and kind of influenced how I edited things and chose what to include and not include into my project videos at that point.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of software are you using? Like, what's your software and hardware? What's your suite, if you will?
For like 3D printing
Just in general,
specifically,
like your
or
projects. Like, I mean, most of your projects are 3D printing oriented. So, like,
Yep.
kind of, you're kind of talking about your whole process. What's kind of the software you're using? So, you're doing some 3D modeling. You're doing some obviously slicing and all that stuff. I know you do a lot of what's that what's the app you always reference, the CAD,
Oh,
Tinkerbox.
Tinkercad? Yeah.
Tinkercad.
Yeah, so the programs I use have kind of been a journey. Of course, when it comes to just the 3D printing portion, I have
Yeah.
all Bamboo
Nice.
printers at this point.
Have you always used Bamboo, or that's more recently?
No, I've started with the classic Ender 3, which was like the cheap thing back in 2020.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tinkering involved with that. I moved on to some like incrementally better 3D printers, I think 2 or 3, before I got my first Bamboo printer, and then that changed my entire output and
They're
ability
really
to do
that
things.
good.
Yeah, look, I'm currently have a deal with them going on right now, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but it's truly what I do believe in, and I
mean, everyone who
push
gets
to my
one,
friends.
everyone who gets one like can't stop raving about them. Everyone's like, I've seen so many people who get Bamboos, and they're like, "Where have you been all my life?" Like, and I'm like, "Is it really like that much different?" Like, I don't know, maybe I'll find out one day, but
They're a lot faster and they're a lot more reliable.
Interesting.
Instead of you having to, and they take a lot of the manual work out, like when it comes to like leveling, when it comes to different calibrations and stuff like that. It just makes it a lot easier to press a button and then let the prints go. Just the speed enables you to do so much more.
Yeah, I have a friend who got a Creality K1 not too long ago, and like a lot of people like had good things to say about it. He personally like really didn't like it. He found that it was like he found that it had a lot of issues. Like he was spending more time trying to fix it than he was like actually printing things. That was his experience with it. I never played around with it, but I mean I have an Ender 3 S1 Pro, which like is fine. It works well. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I mean I definitely like have some issues, and like I know there's like pages and pages on Reddit about like how to tinker with your Ender 3 and modify and do this and do that, and like I haven't like really like gotten too much into the nitty gritty of it, but like I guess the job done for now, and we'll see. I would like to upgrade. I think before I go for like another FDM, I probably would go for like a resin printer next, because I really want to try and get into that. I avoided it just because when I was like first learning 3D printing, I kind of was like deciding like, do I go resin, do I go FDM? And my son was like 2 years old at the time, and I was like, I just don't need all those chemicals like laying around. Like it's just like a disaster waiting to happen. So I found FDM is obviously like cleaner, safer, simpler, but I really do want to learn resin printing, because I feel like that's like you can just kind of get a much nicer finish with resin that you just can't get with FDM.
Yeah, that's what my last video was completely about. It was I also always went through the cycle of like, that print looks really cool and clean, and then you do your research, and then you realize, oh, this process sucks, and then you never buy it, and then 2 months later the whole process starts all over again. You know?
Yeah.
So
like the best projects are always like done on a resin printer, and then like painted with like an airbrush. That's like I think that's the formula to get like really nice final products. But again, like just the investment of both time, resources, and like an actual like financial to get an airbrush, to get a resin printer, to get all the materials, like it's a lot. Like you kind of have to be willing to really dive into that whole world, because it's not It's definitely not simple, you know, but
Yeah.
the end result, I think, kind of speaks for itself, you know?
I know. You have to sacrifice so much to get those clean results. You know, you got to have like some sort of system that you can blow out into the wind so it doesn't, you know, make your house toxic. And it gets everywhere. It's sticky. It's just toxic to touch, toxic to breathe.
It's funny, like you go on Reddit, if you ever like look at like the resin printing subreddit, and like it's just like people will post a video of their resin printer, and every single comment would be like, your setup is garbage and you're gonna kill yourself. Like every single post is like that. It's like it's crazy, you know. And then I have a friend who has a resin printer, and he just like has it out like next to him. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is the worst thing you could be doing. Just, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the toxins, for the most part, I think cause respiratory issues, but there haven't been long-term studies in terms of like the long-term health effects of breathing those things in. So I think
it can't be good. There's no way it's good for you.
No shot. No.
Yeah. I just wanted to circle back. You were talking about like your process of like picking the videos that are good enough, the ideas that are good enough. So like, how do you decide like this is an idea that's video worthy? Like, what's kind of the criteria? Like, you have like a checklist when you're looking at a project. What's your kind of go to? Like, it needs X, Y, Z, you know, to really make a good video.
Well, with a lot of things and a lot of YouTubers, the first thought is always, can I make a good title and thumbnail? Like, is this something that can entice people to actually click on it? That's one of the big things. The second thing is, can I go, like, is the process of making this thing interesting? Can I go beyond, I printed it out and then I put it together and then that's the end of the day. And then, you know, that, like, can I make the build process interesting? Usually that involves me learning something new. And that's one of the more exciting things that I really enjoy about what I do. Sometimes stressful, but is that I'm constantly like learning new skills, learning new, you know, maker abilities and things like that. So I think a lot of people like following my process as I learn these things and try to teach some basic beginner level things as well. So yeah, is the design and build process interesting? And then finally, I try to also have the gimmick of what's being made, something that I can do something visually appealing with, or have some sort of end goal sketch or something to kind of bring everything home and together in a way that's funny or entertaining, something like that. There's a few times where I haven't been able to do that, and that was okay. Sometimes people just want to see the thing, and you know, the finish line is the story. But I really enjoy doing things outside of the lab. You know, I like going out into the public and doing something with that. So that's like the big thing is title and thumbnail. Is the build process interesting? Can I do a gimmick with it? And then two more mini things, which is, has it been done before? If it's been done before, I'm not as interested in making it. Right. With the exception of one video where I showcased the internet stuff, which I thought was really cool. And then, is this just something you could buy on Etsy, right? Right. Is it just a 3D print of like a thing? And it's like, okay, well, if you can get this on, if it's an Etsy-esque kind of thing, I'm not really interested.
Yeah. You want something that really stands out and really sets it apart. No, for sure, I get that. Yeah. What's your like personal favorite project that you've done? Even if it's not your most successful one, it's like your personal favorite.
I think my favorite project would be the Meltan. Yeah. Just because it combines so many different things together, and aesthetically, I think it came out as perfectly as I could have envisioned it.
Yeah. It looks really good, I gotta say.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. It's kind of always what I want to do, is combining technology and 3D printing together in a way that is like really flipping cool, and it uses magnets. So there you go.
Your favorite.
My crutch in life. But yeah, I was happy with how that one turned out, and I think that it kind of speaks for itself. But my favorite video would have to be the Porygon Wii video. I just really liked how I could.
I love that. It's just like when I saw the poor Wiigon, like just I like like that kind of that switch in your brain of like a good pun. Like that was great. I love that. That was such a nice little little gimmick you got there.
Yeah, I mean, I have to credit Finn for having the original idea and what an incredible artistic execution they did on that. But and I love the process of making it. And the big thing was I liked all the sketches I could include and all my friends I could kind of bring together into the channel. It's always exciting for me when I can bring a new friend, rope them into the channel, and have them be a part of the shenanigans that go on.
I love that, like at the end when the guy like he just like walks off and like disappears. You remember it was like it was great.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
I'm glad I could turn that into what that sketch was.
yeah. That's cool. I didn't realize like that you also had a background in like in the cinematography and the kind of like that kind of stuff. Also, that's definitely gives you a leg up for sure. Like you're kind of you already have that experience of like storytelling. You're not just like some guy who likes to make projects and it's like, okay, now I got to figure out how to make good videos. Like you already kind of had that foundation, those foundational skills of like how to make a good video, and then you like to make projects, so put the two together. You got yourself a YouTube channel right there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's definitely naturals out there that can just come onto the scene and just completely blow everyone away with their new formed abilities. I mean, like Michael Reeves, of course, comes to mind with all of, I think every single video, even since the first video Michael Reeves put out, was just an absolute banger. But that's because that is a, 1 in a million kind of human being where they just have this chaotic...
familiar with his stuff.
Oh, well, he does like engineering based things, but they're all... How safe are we supposed to be on this channel? they have real amped up energy, I guess is the term, like to the highest degree, where it's ADHD on ADHD, like layered.
What kind of content are they making?
A variety of different things that are a bit more, I guess, risque in the fact where it's like I'm shooting, my friends with like tasers, or there's a lot of tasers involved, or like I made drones that can identify babies to shoot them, with like Nerf darts, but like the whole idea, the concept is like very
edgy,
like what the heck,
NSFW, like kind of out there.
Yeah, I think
that kind of like that also kind of like. That's like that works uniquely well on YouTube. Like that's the kind of stuff that like your average person like scrolling through YouTube. Like that's the kind of thing that's going to catch their attention. And like that's what works on YouTube. It's like what's going to get you as you're scrolling through YouTube and looking at the millions and millions of things that you could possibly click on. Like what's going to get me to stop and be like, wait, what?
Exactly.
Like, so that's definitely So, but then also like you kind of have to, and like I don't know anything about this guy's channel. But I'm saying like I find that you also kind of have to like you don't want to be like clickbaity and like kind of just making things like for the shock value. Like obviously there are people who do that, but to me it's like I'd rather watch somebody who is less popular but like actually making like quality content than somebody who's like just doing things like oh shock you and like like it's there's definitely a place for both, but it's just my personal preferences.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance game where you never want to go against the expectations of somebody clicking on your video. Right. I think that's the difference between what clickbait is and then what is attention grabby for clicks.
Right.
Right. I think you can be appealing to somebody's senses within 0.5 seconds. Yeah. And as long as you deliver on that, I think you're in the clear,
Right, like Mr. Beast, that's like obviously the one that everyone points to because he's kind of nailed that whole process and like kind of let's do the most out there things and the most attention grabbing things, and listen, it works, so the results speak for themselves, I guess. Yeah,
I mean it works, but I would argue that, it's absolutely not a good guide to follow for first time users or really honestly I think there's an appetite for content to stray away from this in your face everything has the highest stakes at all times. I think there's kind of like a counter, like a whiplash of people, the counterculture and just like kind of like regressing appetites in a certain way for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like junk food. It's like, there's only so much junk food you could eat till you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, what have I done? Like I need a salad.
And I think when a lot of people realize like Mr. Beast went a little too far with just the in your face is I think the narratives were starting to suffer. We were seeing what was happening, but we were never given explanations as to why or motivations between what was actually happening. So I think his storytelling in particular has fallen to pure spectacle. And his videos could be a lot better if he just took a moment to realize that, like the graphs and the number engagements sure are there, but not only will a lot of people be turned off, I think you're only going to maintain the younger audience. You will always have only children, and sometimes, you know what? I wonder if he's kind of made his peace with that and is very okay with just appealing to children.
If that's what's paying the bills, saying and then some, like there are people who whatever, like you look at like Cocomelon, right? As in they're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh, we should start making things for adults now. They know who their audience is, and they're going to sell to that audience. So like, if that's where the views are, I found it interesting. I didn't watch it, but like I know he like did his thing on Amazon Prime Video, and like it was interesting to see like the reactions to it, because a lot of the reactions that I saw online were kind of like they're approaching it with like this idea of like, he's trying to make YouTube content on Amazon Prime Video. And like that was kind of like the big thing, like the big issue people were taking with it, which on the one hand, like I hear, at the same time, like if there's so much content out there on Amazon Prime and Netflix and everything, like if that's what people want to watch, then go for it. But like like I think if I'm watching a TV show, I want a narrative. I want a story.
Yep.
I don't want just like constant action, like ADHD cranked up to 10,
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the criticism kind of touches upon, is that you're trying to make your YouTube video formula work for something that's longer form content.
Right.
And it's the crack started to show for sure.
Yeah. All right, but getting back to your channel.
Yeah, sure. Little me.
Yeah, like I'm curious to hear, like, do you have a favorite project that maybe didn't like take off as much as you like? Do you have like a favorite, like something that you're really proud of, you're really excited about, and then it just totally flopped?
Oh yeah, it's a lot of a good chunk of them. I mean, in particular, I like the Zonai Shield video.
What's that?
That was so in Tears of the Kingdom, the new new 3D Zelda game. There's all these different devices with like swords and stuff like that have like these energy beams coming out of them, and one of them is like the biggest shield, which is this really golden cool design with these dangly bits, and then you have this like projection of this like energy blue kind of primal-esque pattern on the outside. And I thought it would be really fun to kind of like use a huge hologram fan, which was pretty expensive, slap that on like a huge 3D printed like gold thing, and then test it out.
Yeah.
And I thought that one was really going to hit pretty good. And I think it was the most disappointing for me for multiple reasons. One, it was the first video I produced after going full time. And B, it was kind of the inflection point where I realized, oh, I really have to stick to Pokemon. Like like maybe in the future I could try to stray away from this again. And I already had another Zonai, which is the ancient technology people video planned, and I still made that. It was fun, but that was kind of like an inflection point of like, okay, just because you want to do it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate to the results you want, which is unfortunate. And
you think that you have to stick to Pokemon for your videos to do well? Or for you personally, obviously.
Currently, I would argue yes, unless I come up with a really, really good idea I can execute upon down the line.
Why do you think that is? You think it's because like people who are tuning into your channel want to see Pokemon therefore don't want to see anything else?
I think that's part of it for sure. I think I'm in a weird inflection point where I think there is a smaller chunk of people, still sizable, but smaller chunk of people who want to come to see a BigRig Creates video.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, I think, still a larger section of people who like just clicking like, oh, I'm seeing this specifically. I like that specifically. Now I want to watch it.
Right.
They might like the video and subscribe, but it's kind of hard to gauge and pulse exactly what people's tendencies are going to be outside of the metrics you're given on like YouTube Studio and stuff like that. So I think right now it's clear that my branding is like the Pokemon maker, make it real kind of guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's something I try to think about a lot. And there are a couple of things where it's I have a really fun idea that I'm trying to get off the ground that is Pokemon related, but less of a maker kind of video series I have been cooking behind the scenes. I can't make any announcements here, unfortunately, for various reasons, but that is... I think that's going to be a real inflection point is like, can I make something outside of the norm? You know, be it like, is it Pokemon? Is it a maker thing? Do I have the ability to do that, to be entertaining enough to enough people where they come back for what I'm producing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So like, you don't think like, let's just say for argument's sake, like Star Wars content or Game of Thrones or like anything else, like you think if you just put out a video, even with the audience that you have, you think they'd be like, what's this guy doing? Like, I came here for Pokemon. Why am I seeing Star Wars?
Yeah, I in particular try to stray away from anything that's video game related. I at the very least, I'm keeping everything focused on video games. Like that is my goal. Unless something like some crazy opportunity comes up where it's like a film studio wants me to make something for them. Well, then yeah, that's going to be made into a video because of how high the stakes are and stuff like that. But for the most part, I like to keep things grounded to at the very least video games. And then, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more opportunities for things I can do with like the whole maker thing, or the maker world and all that jazz. But I think at least keeping my scope to video games as like a hard cutoff is what I want to do here.
Yeah. So it's more about what you want. Isn't that comes from you, not from the audience?
I would say both. I think it's, I think you have to be honest with yourself and know that that your audience is coming for something in particular, and if you want to deviate from that, especially with how YouTube works, you have to acknowledge that it's going to be a risk, and you could risk fragmenting people if they're not there for your personality specifically, or your style. You have to be honest with yourself and try to know what people are coming back for specifically.
Right. So let me ask you, I'm curious, like as a new YouTuber and advice kind of for new YouTubers in general, when's the time to experiment? Would you say like at the beginning, like when you don't have a following, or once you like there's the kind of what's the expression? It was the Jeff Bezos expression. He says, land and expand. Like first kind of land and really nail one topic, if you will. And then once you nail it, kind of you can grow from there. So which one do you feel is more appropriate for someone who's starting out in YouTube and starting out and making videos? Like start off by experimenting and trying different things and seeing what sticks, or start off like super niche, and then once you kind of nail that niche, then start growing out and whatever, expanding to other things?
I think actually there really isn't a right answer to that, because so many people's content and channels and trajectories can kind of go out in different ways. I think Shank Mods gave me good advice when he said, no YouTube channel, no creator is going to have the same path. And I don't think I'd feel comfortable in guiding people down that high level of a thing. I mean, I think the important thing is definitely experiment, definitely see what sticks, and once you find something that sticks, I would say acknowledge that clearly that's what the people who have seen your videos want to continue seeing, and
Right.
then maybe you can stream off. And if you need other creative outlets, definitely do that, but be picky about, you know, what you're putting with your main stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's channels like there's a channel called Urinating Tree who makes a lot of like NFL commentary, kind of like highly edited recaps of the week. And that's what people know him for, but he started out trying to do like angry video game nerd stuff, like game reviews and things like that. And his channel had a complete pivot, and that can happen. I think the trajectory of a channel is guided by the success you see immediately in front of you. And that's just kind of how YouTube is. You have to see what is working and adapt with the new landscape. So
Right. So it's kind of very much driven by what your audience wants to see.
Yeah, 100%. And things can change. You know, audiences can grow out of certain kinds of content.
Right.
The landscape can, you know, not to say the algorithm, but, you know, the way that YouTube pushes videos can also change how you present your videos, your projects, and everything like that. So you just got to be willing to adapt, I think, is the main takeaways. Be willing to adapt and change.
Yeah. Do you have a presence on other like social media platforms? Like, do you try and put things out on X or on Instagram or TikTok, or do you mostly focus on YouTube?
Yeah. So, I mean, what got like a lot of big quick dopamine rushes is when I put out little shorts onto TikTok and Instagram, and I was like, oh, I'm getting all these views. Like, this is easy. Like, this is way easier than YouTube.
Right.
But then the monetary incentive isn't there, and you just realize that, you know, this is now a platform to guide people into other things. So I'll still post, you know, I still posted some cross shorts to Instagram and TikTok, and then I'm more choosy about shorts on YouTube. But right now, a lot of the content is trailers I make for those other platforms to try to suck people in. And I think those platforms, you know, have hurt a bit. Like, there's less growth for me because I'm not being optimal for those platforms anymore.
Right.
But the moment I started getting more followers on YouTube than the other platforms is the moment I'm like, I'm hard pivoting because this is actually what I want to be doing. I don't want to be producing short form content just because I feel like I'm supposed to.
Right.
Of course, TikTok is, this is, I don't know when this video is coming out, but Golly Gee Willikers, we don't know what the heck is going to happen with that. Yeah.
That's that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I have no idea. There's a lot of speculation. Then, like, I saw a whole thing. People were talking about if TikTok is in fact banned and it's no longer an option. Like, people were asking how that will affect YouTube. Like, will YouTube get flooded with more eyes or more creators or more shorts? Like, how's that going to affect the content landscape across the board? I don't know, the whole YouTube Shorts, like, when it first started, I think it got a lot of hate, and like a lot of people would like really like. There's this one guy, I think it was on Instagram, who used to just like all his videos pretty much were just like hating on people who watch YouTube Shorts basically, and it was like he'd like talk about like how like all the trends were like weeks behind, and how it was basically like Instagram, but like, you know, 2 months behind, you know. And I don't know if that's really true anymore. Like, I think YouTube really did a good job at like building the shorts up, and I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube Shorts, but I find the content on YouTube Shorts is very different than Instagram Reels or, you know, you'd find in other short form content platforms.
Well, originally when Shorts was introduced, it just felt like an afterthought, kind of a slap together. You know, like all the features in YouTube are called products internally, so it was like kind of like a very afterthought product that they were just like, they shoved it out now, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll expand upon it later.
Like, we'll do it too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was really bad. It was difficult to upload a short even back in the day. It's like you had to have these specific requirements. You uploaded it like you would any other video, and then it would magically become a short while you were uploading it. It was a really strange process. It wasn't streamlined, so it didn't have, there was a higher barrier to entry than, you know, just pointing the phone at your face and then hitting the upload button.
Yeah.
So I think the ease of use of uploading was a big factor into what guided the original shorts on YouTube. And because they just kind of threw it out there, nobody really knew what to do. And I think that also made like what the content was on shorts very specific, and it usually was just chopped up existing footage. So there wasn't really much there from a viewer's perspective. With Instagram and especially TikTok at the time, everything was a lot more immediate, a lot more instant.
Right.
It's going to be interesting.
Do you use YouTube Shorts? I know you kind of touched on it for like a second there. Like, how do you kind of use YouTube Shorts, and how much are you using it?
I like using YouTube Shorts when there's projects that I think are fun and interesting, but don't, and also a bit quicker to make, like time-wise. But I can't make a full video out of it, right?
Interesting. So you're using YouTube Shorts, like totally separate from your videos. You're not chopping up a longer video and just putting a shorts out. You're doing separate projects just for YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, I would only post that to other platforms to kind of funnel people into my main stuff. Mainly because if you're on YouTube and you've already seen my stuff, I don't want to be filling up your feed with stuff you've already seen. And B, I want to keep the incentives to watch my main form content on my actual videos. I actually might change a little bit down the line. I just don't like filling up people's feeds with things they've already seen. Yeah. But, you know, some of the more interesting things that I've done, I think, have been follow-ups to projects where people are like, you should do this. And I'm like, you're right, I should have done this. And then I go back and I add something that is a bit less effort than, of course, like, you know, remaking it from scratch.
Like
and
the rock and roll,
well.
like from the pencil sharpener to the speakers.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And it's funny, it's like, man, I put the least amount of effort into that over anything else I've ever produced, and it's my most viewed thing of all time. And I'm just like,
really?
this is ridiculous. Yeah. It's got like
really funny.
2.5 million views, and it's just like, this is dumb.
Well, also, it's a short. So the shorts seem to get, and it makes sense. They get a lot more traction. They get a lot more views. I think it's a different algorithm that they apply to shorts than they're applying to long form content. It makes sense. Well, you know, like it's meant to kind of scroll through and next. You know.
Yeah, I think the big thing is it's being served to you, as opposed to you having to do the conscious decision to make the action to click on a video. And I think that's why, you know, things are literally just viewed more. There's more per minute. You don't have to decide. It's served up to you. Eat your food, please, no matter how bad the slop is.
Like a conveyor belt, just go into your mouth.
Yeah, like the that one old Simpsons cartoon where it's just Homer and Hal, and he's just being fed the donuts. You know,
yeah, exactly. No joke. Yeah. So I'm curious, like, how do you see your channel kind of like developing into the future? Like, what are some of your visions for the next few years? Well, like weeks, months, years. Like, how do you see kind of things playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know years plural at the time, but I would like to, with this show I'm planning, I'd like to really have that be the next inflection point of me deciding what I make on the channel and how I make it. I'm never going to stray away from like the maker projects where I'm making things from scratch and making it into something else. But I think I've evolved a lot as a video content creator, and I'm dipping my toes into something new again, which I think you should always be doing. You know, stick to what you personally do well. I think that's something you should always, you know, do until it fails. But this is kind of like my dipping my toes, seeing how the water is, and I would with this concept, which I can't leak yet. But with this concept I really want it to work out and become something brand new that no one's really ever seen before. It takes concepts from things that exist already, but puts a kind of a big new twist to it. And it is Pokemon related, but I think it could be a lot of fun.
That sounds really exciting. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Just to wrap things up, I just want to ask this, I guess the last couple things, just what's some advice you'd give to new YouTubers, new makers, people who are kind of who watch your videos and they say, that's really cool, I want to do something like that, but either have no experience or very little experience, or maybe have experience just never actually tried it. What's kind of some advice you can give, just for somebody who's looking to start?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as two things. If you have a project or an idea that you want to try doing, do it, see it to the completion of the video, right? Go make sure that you actually execute on that, right? Make the thing, do the thing you want to do, make sure you edit it, and make sure you release it. Because after that, the second biggest thing I can ask for is ask others for critical feedback. And then hopefully you still have the drive, regardless of what the numbers are to begin, because they're never going to be good when you begin, with, the exception of some, blue whales out there. Wait, whales are normally blue. That's a terrible, terrible analogy. White whale is the term, right? So, make sure you see something through to completion, get feedback, and do the whole process all over again. And that is the only way you can get better, and that's the only way that you can find yourself in a position where you're making quality videos. Everything else, all the how do you optimize for SEO, what about shorts, you can work on that, you can focus on that as well, but I think make sure that you have your core concepts and your core abilities down first, and always be improving.
Yeah. If at first you don't succeed, try again, as they say.
Exactly, because if you stop trying, it'll never happen.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I was wondering who was going to bring up the Wayne Gretzky quote.
Yeah, I was like pulling out all the cheesy quotes here.
Michael Scott, let's go.
That's right. Yeah, well, thank you so much. Where can everybody find you, just for those who are not familiar with your channel?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's right there. It's BigRig Creates. If you search me up on any platform that you want to see me on, I'll probably be there. It's simple as that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. I had a fun time talking with you today.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Hope to have you on again soon.
Of course. Have a good one.